Everyone to today's webinar. I'll make a start and I'll just go through a few introduction slides, but yeah, very excited to have you all joining us. So today's webinar is on iRap, practical investment saving lives, and we've got three great speakers who I'll introduce in a moment. I'll be a moderator for today. My name's Daniel Gash. I'm part of the ITE Executive Board and a senior traffic engineer at Traffic Works. And I'll just flip to the next slide. So just want to start with a acknowledgement of country, and we acknowledge the Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first inhabitants of the nation and the traditional custodians of the lands where we live, learn and work. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and we also acknowledge and respect the treaty of the Waitangi and Maori as the original people of the Aotearoa, New Zealand. So just a bit about who we are, the Institute of Transportation Engineers. We're the Australia and New Zealand section, and we're a great pathway to international fellowship in transport. We're an international membership association of transport professionals who work to improve mobility and safety for all transport system users and help build smart and livable communities. We've got about 17,000 members in 75 countries, and we really welcome new members, and there's some great opportunities for students and young professionals as well. So have a look, follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, and have a look at our website, and we'd encourage you to join. We also want to say a big thank you to our sponsors who, without their support, we wouldn't be able to do these great seminars and events that we get to do. So a big thank you to all our sponsors. So just some housekeeping to start off. So you should all be automatically muted. If you've got any technical problems, just message us in the chat and we'll try to help you. We'll have some Q&A after the speakers at the end of the webinar, but feel free to send in your questions at any time in the chat. You'll see down the bottom there's a Q&A button. They will be sort of public for everyone to see, and throughout we'll try to answer those as well, just in the chat, and then we'll go into them a bit more at the end if there's time. So as I said, we've got three great speakers. I'm really looking forward to hearing from each of them, talk about iRap. And if you haven't heard much about iRap, then yeah, this is going to be a great webinar for you. And for those who have had something to do already, it's going to be great to hear some of the things that are happening. So to start off today, we've got Rob McInerney. So he's the CEO of iRap, and we're very excited to have him today. So he's the Chief Executive Officer for the International Road Assessment Program, iRap, a registered charity with a vision for a world free of high-risk roads. With RAP projects and programs now active in over 100 countries worldwide, Rob works closely with key development, bank, political and technical leaders from each country to build local capacity and deliver large-scale and long-term road safety benefits through the provision of safer road infrastructure as part of their own RAP programs. Rob was awarded the Alex Award for Road Safety in 2022, the IRF Global Road Safety Award in 2017, Fellowship of the Australasian College of Road Safety in 2015, and received the Prince Michael International Road Safety Award in 2014 and again in 2020 in recognition of the work of iRap globally. And Rob's going to be sharing a global perspective of iRap. So I'm going to pass over to Rob, and just bear with us for a couple of moments while we just transition screens.
There we go. Thanks very much, Daniel. Hopefully that's good to go. Look, it's a real pleasure to be with everyone this afternoon. And as Daniel mentioned, iRap has a vision for a world free of high-risk roads, and we need a lot of help to make that happen. And through ITE and through all the partnerships worldwide, it's a really big movement, a big family that's focused on saving as many lives as we can. So today I'll give you a very quick snapshot of some of the global perspectives. And number one is road trauma is the biggest killer of young people worldwide, aged between 10 and 24 years old. That is the tragedy that's happening on the world's roads. And as a result, the United Nations has actually set a sustainable development goal to halve road deaths and injuries by 2030. So this is a global epidemic, pandemic, and really it needs a global response. And that's what the iRap partnerships seek to do. What's been really important is that the United Nations member states have actually agreed on 12 global road safety performance targets to actually help deliver on that halving of road deaths by 2030. So that includes target 3, that to make sure that all new roads that we build are at least 3-star or better for all road users, for pedestrians, for cyclists, micromobility, motorcyclists, vehicle occupants. And target 4 is to progressively bring 75% of travel to that same 3-star or better standard. And so the iRap tools and technology are there to support governments, development banks, all the partners involved in making roads safe, the engineering community as a whole, to actually be able to plan, identify these high-risk roads, work out which ones are highest return on investment, to actually upgrade those roads and celebrate that success. And I'll take you through some examples of that now. Globally, we've got sort of 2 main metrics that at a map level that you'll be hopefully familiar with already, but one is risk mapping, and that's where we're looking at the crash data. So it's a historical look, it's the rear vision mirror, if you like, but it's where we're able to look at the fatal and serious injury crashes per kilometre and per kilometre travelled in a similar format. So whether that's from the Australian results you can see there, the United States, from New Zealand's urban risk mapping, a UK example in the top left corner, you're actually able to present that in an identical fashion. So you can start to benchmark one country and another. The other main metric that we use is star ratings. So if you're familiar with star ratings for cars, iRap is basically the sister program looking at the star ratings for road infrastructure. So a 1-star road has this level of death and injury, and for each incremental improvement in star rating, we can actually halve the levels of death and serious injury on those roads. It's based on the road features. So those things that are within your control as an engineering community, the roadside hazards, pedestrian provision, intersection design, those sort of road features, 50 in total, that are collected every 100 metres along the road, and then based on the evidence base, converted into the star rating results. And again, you can see some examples from Mexico, from Utah in the US, Queensland here, but also cities all around the world. So the pedestrian star rating, for example, and its results. So this is for both urban and rural environments and really fits within the overarching safe system framework, and also some of the movement and place aspects that some of you might be dealing with. iRap globally, as Daniel said on the intro, more than 100 countries now, 116 in total, are rolling out programs like you have here in Australia. And importantly, it's about mobilising that investment that will actually save lives. And we've seen more than 95 billion US dollars mobilised globally on the back of iRap assessments that have been done by governments and others in those countries. So here in Australia, the lead is OSRAP. So the program is known as OSRAP. And so there's no difference. iRap's just the global umbrella organisation, and OSRAP is yours for those of you in Australia, and KiwiRap for anyone from New Zealand joining today. And the partnership is led by Austroads here in Australia, and then has all the key partners involved. So all the individual road authorities, and we'll hear from 2 of those today, but also AAA, ARRB, Infrastructure Australia, the Office of Road Safety, Roads Australia, and the Australasian College of Road Safety. So you can see it brings everyone together with a common focus on creating an Australia free of high-risk roads and doing it together. What I wanted to show you very quickly today is one of the tools that we've just launched, and with the help of TAC, the insurer in Victoria, who actually looks after everyone who is killed or injured in a road crash. TAC is involved in their care. And I think this is important for one main reason, and that is that we've got apathetic about our response to road trauma. People are dying on a public asset. That's the reality. But actually, we're very blind to the injury burden that is there. In Australia, you're looking at sort of more than 4,500 people a year will suffer brain injury of some form in road crashes. Close to 10,000 with soft tissue injury. Degloving, when the skin is ripped from your body, 395 of those every year in Australia. They're filling up our health system. They're causing ambulance ramping. They are changing people's lives and their quality of life forever. So make sure you always keep in your mind the injury burden, because there's 41,000 of those or more in Australia every year. And you have great power to be able to help reduce that number. The other one is the star rating result. So just to give you a very quick sense, 33% of travel for pedestrians in Australia is on 3-star or better roads. Again, the global target is 75% of travel, so we're well short for pedestrians. 29% of travel 3-star or better for bicyclists, only 23% for motorcyclists. For those of you who travel by those modes, and many of us do, you'll probably appreciate that risk as you drive around the roads. And vehicle occupants a little bit better at 58% of travel currently 3-star or better. So we've got a lot of opportunity for improvement and opportunity to save lives here in Australia. So what does this look like globally? And I just want to give you some practical examples from around the world. This road is in Morocco. It's just out of Marrakesh. We were taken on a site visit there by the engineers who built that road, and they were very, very proud of what they built. This lovely new 4-lane road looked fantastic on the design drawing, very proud about its finished product on the ground. The reality though is, as I'm sure you could imagine, is that what they've built might be 3 or 4-star for vehicle occupants, but is essentially 0 or 1-star for pedestrians and cyclists. That road, as it's been built, is going to kill and injure a lot of them over the next 20 years. But it didn't need to happen. If you can pick that up at design stage, you can stop roads like that being built, and simply by bringing in that 3-star or better target for all road users. And so one of our goals and visions, if you like, from an iRap perspective, is we want to star rate and have a star rating for every design on Earth. So picture that we're working with Autodesk and also Bentley, the 2 main software packages. These partnerships are active at the moment, but our goal is that we can build the star rating and the fatality estimates into their design packages. So when you design a road, you press a button, it says, congratulations, 4-star for cars, but you're about to build a road 1-star for pedestrians and cyclists and kill 25 of them. Would you like to continue? So we hope that that can bring power and information right onto the desktops of the designers as they are designing the roads. Our next goal is to star rate every road on Earth, and we'll hear from Fritha in particular on some of the world-leading work they're doing with iRap, which is using artificial intelligence and big data to be able to fast track and generate at a lower cost the star ratings for ultimately every road on Earth. And we've got great examples from New South Wales already as part of an iMove partnership with Transport for New South Wales, UTS, and Didi and TomTom and the federal government, where that looked at developing the iRap accreditation standard. We've now got companies like Andidi and Agilis who've actually been accredited to use big data and LiDAR and satellite information to actually generate iRap attributes, whether it's volume and speed or it's roadside hazards and lane width. All of that becomes possible with using big data. Everything from satellite to photogrammetry to the LiDAR and street view data. And another example, we're actually collecting Street View with Google in Ecuador and Costa Rica so that source data can become available for road safety purposes and partnerships worldwide. The other big thing we're working on, and really keen for anyone who is interested in getting involved in this, we're focused on the US initially, but when you look at this data, how many other people could benefit if they had access to it? So the mapping companies can, the Googles and Heres of the world, can help you with the safest route and mode choice from A to B. You've also got the insurance companies who are trying to price risk of road trauma, and this data can help them understand pay-as-you-go insurance models, or at least being able to inform risk based on the safety of the roads that someone's likely to be driving on. For the companies themselves, the reality for most of the companies is that they do not have a safe workplace when it comes to the roads they have to drive on. And for them, from a driver training perspective, but also managing their health and safety risk, this data can be very valuable for them. And of course, the last one is that road safety people like yourselves can all benefit from having access to this data. So we're working on a range of initiatives there to be able to create the scale for the demand for the data, but also the scale that will allow clever people like what Fritha will be talking about to actually really shape how this data is collected in the future. The next thing we'd like to see is star ratings for every road user. Here in Australia, you're using vehicle star ratings quite successfully, but you haven't yet switched on the pedestrian star rating, the cycling star rating, and the motorcycle star rating. And you can see the example on the left there we've been doing with NACTO, which is a US-based organisation, but looking at particularly urban street design. Sky Duncan from New Zealand actually runs that organisation, and she's based in New York. But you can imagine that Morocco example, and rather than building a 1 and 3 star, sort of 1 star for pedestrians and bicyclists, 3 star for vehicles, they could have built something that was 5 star for everyone. And our sort of dream is to have 5 star cities, 5 star strip shopping centres, 5 star movement and place type examples. And we're also rolling that out and the model through the Star Rating for Schools program, where again, it's like a little tablet where the kids get involved, go out to the school, they can star rate it, they can say where they're scared, but then it leads to upgrades like you can see there on the right, the first ever raised platform crossing in Vietnam. And that's now rolling out on scale across the country. So this sort of a bit of a proven treatment scaling globally through the iRap partnerships is really what we're all about. The other ones that we're working on is a lot more in the urban space, and a whole bunch of new urban countermeasures are now in the iRap model. And so that includes a lot of the traffic calming and the innovative sort of lower speed dealing and providing for the vulnerable road user groups. A lot more of those treatments are now in the latest edition of the iRap star rating and investment plan processes. We've also been working on cycle wrap, and that's for micro-mobility, but also all forms of cycling off-road as well as on-road. Just as a little side thing, in the Netherlands, one of their biggest crash types is single vehicle bicycle crashes. So I was sort of wondering what that was when I first heard it, but basically it's a lot of those sort of 7-foot tall Dutch people falling off their bike with no helmet. And those injuries can be really significant, limb fractures, head injuries and others. And it is a big part of their problem. And so they need to deal with those cycling facilities off-road's not just good enough. They need to make sure the off-roads are safe. And we're also working in the modelling space in traffic simulation, working with AIM-SUM as part of a big European project to essentially look at urban planning and traffic simulation models and how you can eventually be able to look at different scenarios and see both the CO2 emissions and the percent of travel at 3-star or better for each road user group and the ultimate death and serious injuries under different urban traffic scenarios. So that's work that's happening right at the moment. The other one we're doing is obviously making sure that every high return investment is identified. And that's really important. And we've got some standard investment plans that people have been using around the world, but we're now doing a lot more to help people develop their own investment plans, whether that's a Vision Zero safe system plan like Victoria's been doing, or in this case, in the UK, they've just announced a brand new, just in the last week or so, £50 million program that's rolling out across the country. They're using the risk mapping to identify the highest risk sections of road, and they're using these user-defined investment plans, much more interactive, so the engineers can really get hands-on with the solution and the treatment selection, and can still see how it contributes to raising the star rating performance across their network and how many lives they'll save. So that's all up and running at the moment, and again, available for all the AusRap and KiwiRap partners here in this part of the world. The next part of the equation is making sure there's enough money to funding all the great things you identify that need to be built and upgraded. And so this all fits together as part of results-based financing. Government setting, in the Australian example, a target for 80% 3-star or better by 2030. You then get these iRap assessments or AusRap assessments that can tell you the return on investment of those upgrades. We can now measure how many brain injuries, quadriplegias, spinal injuries will be saved, and the savings to the health and insurance system. You can then mobilise those savings into a shadow toll or a dividend stream that will support the upfront capital investment in those roads. So I'm happy to talk about that more in the question and answer, but really, when you think about it, you're sitting on huge returns on investment in road safety, typically 5 to 1. So why aren't we investing if it's got that big a return on investment? And that's what we're doing in this space, where we're creating public-private partnerships to take 1-star roads to 4- and 5-star roads. And the example you can see there is from Brazil, probably the country where this has been rolling out the most. And you can see the star ratings there of the existing road called the Pipa concession. And here is what it will be within about 5 years. So they've front-loaded the concession agreement to deliver on safety. And the company who's won that contract to build, operate and maintain the road is actually incentivised to deliver those safety benefits as quick as they can. And so you can see some of the partners involved. There's pension funds involved in this and investing. They'll be keen to actually scale this globally. We'll also see the scale of investment, $3.4 billion being rolled out, and the incentive schemes in the bottom corner there, where the company is incentivized to deliver on safety. Everyone's a winner if you can deliver and take these sort of 2- and 3-star roads to 4- and 5-star in that example from Brazil. And then the very last and most important bit is engineers are horribly modest people, but you have to start celebrating the great work you're doing. We want to see you ribbon cutting every road that you upgrade that hits that 3-star or better global standard. The example from Shanghai there, where they hit 5-star for pedestrians and cyclists. Transurban, part of their road in Australia, has hit 5-star as well. And essentially it's 4-star or better right across all their assets in Australia. Indonesia, their major highway network hitting 3-star or better. So take the time to ribbon cut and celebrate the life-saving success that you're having. And then just in summary, we're trying to halve road deaths and injuries by 2030. We want to make sure all new roads are 3-star or better, and we maximise travel on 3-star or better roads by 2030. To get there, if we can star rate every design on Earth, we'll be doing well. If we can star rate every road on Earth, that will be fantastic. If we can make sure we've got a star rating for every road user, that's important. Make sure we're identifying these high return investments and mobilising the engineering expertise behind it to do it well. Make sure it's financed. Put the business case to Treasury, to government, to the community to make sure that these investments actually happen. And then very lastly, and always, celebrate your star rating success. And if we can do that, we're going to save lots of lives. And just one last thing I'd wanted to share with you is some work that Johns Hopkins University has just finished doing for us. And every one of you can share in this success, because worldwide, all of our partners, based on the roads that have already been upgraded around the world, more than 3.2 million people will be saved from death and serious injury from those upgrades that have already been built. That's the whole population of Madrid. That's all of Brisbane and the Gold Coast wrapped into one. That's the life-saving success that ITE members can make happen. And I encourage you all to be passionate and take on that challenge and save lives yourself in every day that you work in this industry. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rob. I really appreciate your passion for road safety, and I've heard you sort of ask that question before. What is the injury burden? I think that's a real good takeaway that all of us engineers and planners and just people involved in transport can take away. What is the injury burden? And I also really liked your point at the end about celebrating what we do, and yeah, talking to our friends and colleagues and family about what we're actually doing. Like I'm sure you wouldn't mind people tagging iRap in new projects that they're improving road safety, all that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's really exciting and exciting to be part of that. This improvements to road safety that's sort of taking off across the globe. Thank you for sharing, Rob.
My pleasure.
So now I'll pass over to Matt. So again, just bear with us as we share screens. As Matt does that, I'll just introduce Matt. So Matt Allen is a Senior Network Safety Planning Officer at the Department of Transport Planning in Victoria. Matt is a Senior Network Safety Planning Officer at Department of Transport Planning with 4 years experience in transport engineering, specialising in road safety. Matt has a diverse skill set and experience across the transport sector with key expertise in network risk assessment, speed management and road safety evaluation. Matt started his career in Christchurch, New Zealand before moving to Melbourne, Australia to join the Department of Transport and Planning and contribute to delivering the new Victorian Road Safety Strategy 2021 to 2030. Matt is passionate about his work and the direct impact it has on saving lives in our road network. And so Matt will be talking to us today about the work Road Safety Victoria are doing to expand the use of iRap in Victoria and some great results they have managed to achieve when evaluating their recent road safety investments. So we welcome Matt to present to us today.
Awesome, thank you, Daniel. And hopefully that's all working on your end as well. And yeah, regret following up Rob after that one. That's a fantastic preso, and hopefully I can do a bit of ribbon cutting myself in my presentation and celebrate some of the good results we've had upgrading roads and investing in our network. All right, so the key focus of this webinar being on practical investments that have and will save lives. I want to outline first just some of the key investments the Victorian government has made on our road network over the last decade to improve road safety and provide safe roads. So the largest investment we've seen in road safety was made through our $1.7 billion Safer Roads Infrastructure Program, also known as STRIP. And that rolled out a huge amount of median and shoulder barrier systems on our rural roads, providing that full safe system transformation. And that program also included a range of other safe system infrastructure, such as intersection improvements, safer speeds, and also included trialling key innovations and technologies to help drive down that sort of road trauma level. And then we have a range of other programs that have also been sort of implemented across the last decade as well. So that would be things like the Federal Road Safety Program, which was through the recent COVID period, the Federal Black Spot Program, and Motorcycle Safety Levy, which are sort of ongoing programs we have as well, Victoria. And these also provide substantial amounts of investment in road safety infrastructure. And all of this demonstrates just how committed Victoria is to our goal of Vision Zero. So that's zero fatal and serious injuries by 2050. And we're uplifting our network by making those practical road safety investments, and really proud of our sort of performance, sort of in road safety in Australia. And so just a bit of background on how OzRap has progressed in Victoria, specifically over the last 2 decades, to sort of set the scene for my presentation, as we'll be having a look at Victoria's network star ratings and a bit of a case study from our recently completed Top 20 infrastructure program. So OzRap first started in the early 2000s and was established by the AAA RACV in partnership with iRap. And following its inception, there was, I guess, these organisations did the first ever, I guess, mass star rating exercise across Australia. And for Victoria, they rated approximately 1,700 kilometres of our network. And that was primarily our higher sort of function corridors, such as the Western Highway and Princess Highway. So corridors that, provide a lot of that movement function. So then in 2014, as part of the that $1.7 billion Safer Roads program, the Department of Transport and Planning undertook our first statewide survey, or our first and only statewide survey of the entire rural network, as well as some urban corridors to really understand how risk is distributed across our network. And this data was intended to really be that baseline star rating of our network to compare to following delivery of that program. As well as sort of support that future program and project development as well. So now we're sort of in 2023, and OzRap data is being used more widely across the organisation. It's included in other programs, so it's as part of the Federal Road Safety Program funding requirements. So we need to essentially assess before star ratings and after star ratings of sort of projects to get funding for those. And that sort of shows how those projects improve the star rating by investing in this sort of network. And additionally, our major project delivery organisations, so MRPV, are increasingly using our OzRap star ratings to develop safe roading projects and ensure all of our new builds are at that sort of 4- and 5-star level from the get-go, and minimise sort of any retrofit and additional costs down the track. And just before I get into the really cool stuff, which everyone wants to get to, the results, I just want to take the time to first explain the 2 data sets we'll be sort of having a look at today. So it's important to sort of understand the coverage of our data and the limitations and context for these before we sort of drill into the results across the next few slides. So we have 2 OzRap data sets at DTP. The first is that 2014 statewide data set. And that essentially is our baseline, but it doesn't fully capture our close to 26,000 kilometres of network. So it's, I would say, all rural corridors, but only a handful of metro Melbourne corridors assessed to date. So it's not fully representative of our network, but very close. The second is what we call our 2022 data set, which is essentially an updated 2014 data set that includes our OzRap assessments that we've undertaken, I guess, since that first collection. And also, those assessments have been completed from either desktop studies of scope approval reports, or there've been actual on-road collection and coding exercises as well. In addition, sort of key attributes like traffic volume, speed limits, and operating speed have all been updated to provide sort of the most accurate representation of 2022 conditions, because all of those things have changed, of course, over the last sort of 8 years. And this data set does not have full coverage of, I guess, our network as it stands to date. It's really just a representation of some of the investment we've made over the last decade. So it's not all encompassing. So it largely captures our top 20 program from the Safer Roads Infrastructure Program, which I'll talk to soon. And also any sort of speed limit assessments, any of those changes in speed limits that have happened over that time as well on our lower function roads, because those do have a dramatic increase in the sort of star rating as well. Cool, and yeah, on to the cool stuff. So what you're seeing here has been extracted from our internal Power BI application, which we've developed internally to sort of better embed AusRap star rating data across the organization and make it really available and sort of upfront. Now, as discussed in the previous slide, we've only captured that small portion of the change in the last 8 years. And that change equates to about $600 million of capital expenditure, and that moves the sort of average star rating across our network by 0.2. One of the global targets that Rob mentioned in his intro is for that 3-star or better by 2030. And that's for new roads, but I guess we're sort of using that and lifting that for sort of all roads as well internally. So we want to be over that 3 on average. So as you can sort of see, I think to me, this really demonstrates how much investment is required to upgrade that your network to that level. Because though you can sort of see that green and yellow starting to peek through in our 2022 data from those programs, there's still a massive kilometre length of network that we need to invest in to move it from red and black, so 1 and 2 star upwards. And now we do expect that with our updated with updating our star ratings, we would actually shift really close to 3 stars, as there has been a sort of significant change not captured in this update. And so we look forward to having this data to sort of understand how far we really need to go to close that gap and provide safe roads on our network. But it's, and though I started with a somewhat, let's call it sobering to show the sort of how much effort and how much expenditure you need to move that dial, there are absolutely good news stories here. So in the we've seen a transition of our 1 and 2 star roads to higher ratings, and that shifting of that distribution from left to right. So I think Rob again mentioned that has a tangible reduction in fatal and serious injuries and road trauma. So that's a fantastic result to see. You really see a shift from largely 2-star and 1-star roads up to 3, 4, and 5 stars. And that's just a massive sort of effort. And we really expect that to provide a sort of very meaningful reduction in road trauma on these roads. And again, another target set by iRap, and Rob discussed that, as the proportion of vehicle kilometres travelled. So that's a metric that takes into account personal risk on a corridor, or one's exposure to risk on a corridor. And so that needs to exceed 75%. We've got 80%. 80% of travel needs to be on a 3-star or greater road. And again, we've seen this dramatic improvement from 51% in 2014 all the way up to 63% in 2022. And if we filter this further by rural roads, which is where a lot of our programs have been focused in recent years on improving rural roads, that actually shifts up to 71%. So we're getting really close to that 75% target, but also close to our 80% target. So yeah, really positive progress and results there. And we have just a lot more happening in this space now. So we have a range of work packages that focus on using AusRap data to further drive investment in road safety across our strategy period, which is 21 to 2030, which sort of is the same as the global sort of strategies, but also our strategy period out to 2050 as well, and that Vision Zero target. So the most important one I'm very excited for is our 2023 AusRap data collection and coding exercise. Now, this is a recollection of the entire network, and having this data in hand will enable a more accurate look at that network change over the last decade of road safety. And I really look forward to updating those targets and seeing how close we're getting. Now, this data collection will collect all of our state-owned roads. So previously we didn't have metro covered, and now we will have all state-owned roads, barring any roadworks, which we'll still collect but won't produce star ratings. And then leading on from this, this is the integration we will have with OSRAP in our network safety planning initiative. So the network safety plan is a framework that will determine what the Victorian road network should look like to achieve 0 deaths and serious injuries by 2050. And that will consider sort of the required infrastructure elements, vehicle technology improvements, and speed limit setting, all in one sort of package. And updated OSRAP data is absolutely critical to this project, as it sort of forms the input asset data that we're using. And that enables us to measure our current state, which is directly from the OSRAP data, where we're at today, our future end state, where we need to be in terms of that infrastructure and sort of speed component, and then the gap in between those two, so we can start to understand investment, how much money is needed, where is it needed the most, where's the highest sort of benefit sites for treatment, and that's all going to be very fantastic, and again enables us to set more measurable targets that we can sort of tangibly work towards and get to that sort of ultimate goal of safe roads. And then finally, we're sort of making this really strong push to provide technology-focused solutions, and that's supporting guidance for sharing of OSRAP inputs and star ratings across our organisation. So as discussed earlier, we have the Power BI application for sharing OSRAP data with our colleagues, and that's made this data really accessible to everyone. And we already have examples from our major roads project teams and transport planning teams who have successfully used this data in project development and planning studies. So in addition to this, we're also looking at expanding this offering through our internal Esri GIS system, so to provide that sort of optimized visualization of star rating results in combination with all of our other data sets. So things like crash data, road network classification, so movement in place is a massive one for us, and all of our other sort of operational data sets. And that will really paint a sort of complete picture of risk on our network. So yeah, all very exciting. I'm just going to take a drink, 1 second. Beautiful. All right, that was a lot of what we're doing at the moment and sort of what's been happening across our network in that sort of time period. But I just want to take the time now to work through a bit of a case study of how we can use OSRAP star ratings to really demonstrate the value of our investments, and that an improvement in star rating, 1 to 5, anywhere along that scale directly correlates to that improvement in road safety performance. Cool. So as I flagged earlier, one of the biggest investments we have made in Victoria was that Safer Roads program, and sort of a sub-program from that was our top 20 projects. So those that was a $560 million investment in our top 20 program, which aimed to deliver transformational safe system treatments along our highest function roads. The main scope of these projects was largely that full containment barrier system and the supporting road safety infrastructure to provide a sort of safe system transformational project. And this program was expected to reduce head-on and run-off road crashes, as lane departure crashes the most prevalent crash type on these corridors, typically making up around 70 to 80% of fatal and serious injuries on our rural roads. And these projects sort of started planning at the start of the program, which was sort of early 2013, 2014, commenced in 2017. And I believe these have now all been delivered to my knowledge, as 2 corridors wrapped up late last year, the final 2. Yeah, so a fantastic level of investment on our network there through that program. Cool. And in terms of, so here we have a sort of map of the vehicle star ratings prior to construction of our top 20 program. So from our that's from our 2014 baseline. And as you can see, we have a range of before ratings across this network, with a majority in that sort of 3-star range, but we do have a spread. There is even some green in there as well, and an average sort of average length basis of 2.6 stars. Now, Victoria's strategic target for these routes under the Road Safety Strategy 2021 to 2030 is to achieve at least 4-star on these routes, with the presence of a median barrier as a sort of minimum requirement as well. Now, following the top 20 program, we expected a very strong uptick in this metric, given the treatments installed were primarily barrier systems and that full containment, though there was some sort of supporting infrastructure as well on sort of lower function routes along these sites. Now, in terms of where we got to and where sort of what the after star ratings came in as, we have here our, I guess, post-construction star ratings for all of those roads. And that's after, so compiling all of our after star rating assessments that we mentioned before. We can sort of see that the top 20 program has had a really mammoth increase in the average star rating of close to 2 stars, up to 4.5 stars on average per length. And this increase is largely driven by those safe system transformation projects along the Calder, Hume, Princess Highway and Western Highways. So those really, really green ones you can see. And they provided full containment on those roads. And most of those on a corridor basis are now 5-star roads. And so as you can sort of see, I hope from this demonstration, tangible investment in our road networks really has massive benefits when looking at reducing road safety risk and sort of eliminating that risk. And this reduction in road safety risk does translate to a very significant reduction in road trauma. So our initial 1-year post-implementation, so it's a preliminary evaluation reporting undertaken by the Safer Roads program, showed that across the top 20 program, there was a 35% fatal and serious injury reduction and a 55% reduction in fatalities alone. So that improvement in road safety risk from 2.5 to 4.5 on average really does reduce trauma on these corridors. And these figures are actually also quite conservative, as the crash and casualty reductions are across the length of the corridor. So there are sites where no treatments were installed, but they are still included in the results. So we're looking at a corridor evaluation, not whether we installed treatments at individual sites. And that does bring down the average reduction quite significantly. And the other one would be that some of the projects in that program, so the more yellow star rated roads in the after period were less transformational infrastructure, sort of like wide centerline treatments instead of barrier systems. So that also reduces that effectiveness. But yeah, no, it's still a fantastic result. And interestingly, the TAC are currently finalising a detailed analysis of their hospitalisation claims and fatalities involving vehicle occupants. And that indicates even more significant reductions after the completion of those safety barrier treatments. So they're focused largely on the barrier treatments, and that's above those results you're seeing there as well. So some really fantastic results coming out following that investment. And that's it from me. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed the preso, and yeah, I think we'll be doing questions at the end. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Matt, for that presentation. And yeah, even just from a few figures that you've shown, I think for me anyway, it's really exciting to see the red and the black change to the green. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing some of the outcomes of all this data as well, to yeah, just see how far we've come with all the investments that's been happening. And I think yeah, again, visually, it looks like it will be a really useful tool for looking at the gaps in the network and you know, where we can start prioritizing treatment. So thank you again for that presentation. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more with the OSRAP data in the near future. Great. So just before I introduce our next speaker, so a couple of questions come through in the chat. Feel free to keep sending those in. We've also got the Q&A button down the bottom that you can put your questions in there that we can actually answer as we go. So feel free to use that. So our next speaker is Dr. Fritha Argus, and she is the Research and Data Coordinator at Road Safety Branch, Main Roads, Western Australia. Fritha's role entails supporting and conducting research and analysis into determining high-risk locations on the WA state network, prioritising locations for safety funding, and providing road safety advice, particularly in analytics. She has worked in the field of road safety since 2014, after completing her PhD in epidemiology and a Bachelor of Mathematical and Statistical Science with honours at the University of Western Australia. And Fritha will be talking to us today about how advances in technology created opportunity for AI's involvement in risk rating. She'll show results from an early pilot project and what the next steps are for WA. So thank you, Fritha, and I'll pass over to you to be our final presentation for today.
Thanks, Daniel. So today I wanted to tell you a story about our recent journey with iRap and how some improvements to existing technologies utilised in a different field are ultimately shaping what we're doing, where we're going. Unfortunately, I was at a bit of a loss of how to create a interesting, cohesive narrative around all these seemingly disparate pieces of work. So a colleague recommended that I ask ChatGTP. So here's what it had to say. Strong start, once upon a story, that's really great. And for those of you who want to read some of that, you can see that as with ChatGTP, it has some of the elements and it sounds plausible enough without actually being totally correct. However, the reason I bring this to your attention is that this last line here really resonated with me. And I really think that innovation, commitment to road safety, and collaboration have been key guiding principles to what we have done and where we're going. So I want to use this as our structure, our frame for today's presentation. So at Main Roads, we're always looking for ways to improve, to innovate, to automate, to make things easier for ourselves. So in 2010, Main Roads was the first Australian state to use mobile laser scanning for engineering design. So back then, the system was completely custom. All the pieces had to be custom built and put together. It captured around 300 points per second. It could be driven at about 60 kilometers per hour. But to get the density of points needed to do your engineering designs, you had to drive the piece of road, 6 to 8 times. That said, it was still definitely safer for the surveyors. It was still more cost effective, reduced the time for taking these, to doing the surveys, as opposed to sort of traditional, man on the ground type surveying. Nowadays, the off-the-shelf versions are top of the line. They can collect 2 million points per second. You can drive at 80 kilometers or whatever the speed limit is. So you only need to do a route or a piece of road, 1 or 2 passes to get that same density of points. So this is an example of how advances in technology and existing technologies have really started to have improved enough to start to make what we're doing here possible. Okay, so in 2017, though, it was quite obvious to people in our surveying branch that there was a huge amount of wasted data in the fact that we would go out and do these surveys and you would get this full three-dimensional point cloud, and then they would have it processed into some line diagrams that could be used for engineering design. But nobody was ever looking at the point cloud or doing anything with it. So this was kind of one piece of information in this story. This disparate pieces of projects is what I was talking about. Later on in 2018, kind of because of that, the surveying branch thought that it might be really cool to put together a web portal to keep all of the 3D point clouds so that people could go in and, say, drive a 3-dimensional network. And so they did an innovation and research, or I&R project, to put that together. They also discovered that TomTom actually, as a byproduct of all their mapping work, like mapping programs, actually collect LiDAR on huge amounts of the network across the world. And so the question was put to TomTom whether they would be willing to sell that LiDAR data, point cloud data, to us. Took them some time, but eventually came back and said, yes, absolutely, we will sell that to you. Meanwhile, in the road safety space, there was the National Road Safety Action Plan that had actions in it where we wanted to aim to achieve the 3-star or better OSRAP star ratings for 80% of travel on state roads, or a minimum of, and a minimum of 90% on national highways as well. So we had this kind of driver in the road safety space to star rate our network. So in 2019, a project in my team was put together to star rate the WA network. At the time, we had a quote to have it done star rated in the traditional method, but it was cost prohibitive at the time for us to be able to do that. So we looked to using data that we already had in our corporate database to try and pull together all of the different fields and features. So your speed limits, your roadside hazards, lane widths, shoulder widths, all the different parts that pull together to go into an OSRAP star rating. What did we already have? What could we already use? What coding and business rules could be used? And one of the things that came from that is that roadside hazards was really something that wasn't a standard feature that was collected by people when you did a design or you made a change to the road. And so we were basing our star ratings on video data that had been coded by a traditional method back in sort of 2008. So we thought, wonder if there's a way to automate this process rather than having somebody sit there and watch a video and say, yep, there's a tree, there's a barrier, you know, there's a cliff, whatever. Can we have some sort of autonomous extraction from video? And I guess serendipity or chance or something came together, and the surveying team and the road safety branch team just happened to align in this space. And rather than going down the video feature extraction route, we realized that there was this opportunity with LiDAR. So we had all of this 3-dimensional point clouds that had all this information. It knew it, you know, it had information about where the trees were and where the barriers are, where are the walls, the ditches, the culverts, whatever. And, you know, how could we actually pull that out in an autonomous way? So we pulled together and put another innovation research project, which we're calling the pilot project, which I'll talk a bit more detail about. So the aim of the pilot project was to test the use of 3D point cloud and autonomous techniques to extract road and roadside features. So we purchased about 2,000 kilometres of MoMA data from TomTom. So that's LiDAR and 360 imagery data. Just as an aside, you can see here that the Velodyne LiDAR scanner that TomTom uses collects about 700,000 points per second. So not quite as good as the top of the line for the surveying companies, but much better than what was happening, you know, back in 2010 when this all sort of started. So we wanted to get a range of road types in the 2,000 kilometres because we wanted to really test the automated system. We wanted to try and get as many edge cases as possible. So you can see from these maps, we tried to get various areas from across WA, I should say, and we tried to get some, you know, open forests, or some rural forests, I should say, which are mostly down in our southwest, and they have lots of windy roads. They've got trees quite close by, don't have very many clear zones, often don't have barriers. And then we had some urban highways, which have got a lot more bus stops, property access points, shopping centres, other things. So we were trying to test, you know, how well could you autonomously pull this information that you need for iRap out of the LiDAR. So these were the features that we included. They are all features out of iRap. They're obviously not the full list, but they were kind of really focused ones that we were really interested in, particularly the roadside hazards, because that's something we don't collect, you know, as a standard when we're doing our work. And this was a really successful trial. So pretty much all the elements could be detected in either the LiDAR or the imagery, or both together. In this image here, you can see with the pink there, that is a divided line markings making up the divide versus the purple, which is like a physical barrier making up the divide. In this one here, you can see that it can tell the difference between power points and street lightings, because you can see on the green part there, it sort of shows the overhead part where there's the street lighting. It could tell the difference between concrete and metal barriers. There were some issues initially with being able to detect audible edge and audible center lines, given how small they are, because of some of the quality of the original LiDAR, but improvements to the LiDAR quality over time have meant that that problem has been rectified. Very, very steep slopes off the side of the road can be a little bit hard to see just based on where the LiDAR is placed on the camera, but given the categories in the OSRAP like coding, it's not as big an issue as it could have been. I was going to play a video, but I could not get that to work this afternoon. So here are some screenshots from a really early video. You can see in the little corner there is the picture of the actual road we're looking at and the colorings in the top right. So you can see here in that kind of green color, that's your central hatching color. You can see the difference between the left and right boundaries of the road line markings, so the yellow and the orange. In this, you can see the purple as the trees. If we move along a bit further, we can see here this sort of noise wall in this kind of brown color as well. So yeah, it was really quite a successful trial. We could see lots of the different pieces. And our second, I guess, framing point here is our road safety focus. And so interestingly, 2019 was, everything was going on. 2019 is the year that iRap were conceiving the idea of iRap, and that's an accelerated intelligent capture of road safety data using automatic and repeatable and scalable methods. So not reliant on human effort, readily scalable. You know, once you've got the data, you can just run this, and the algorithms, I should say as well, you can run this on huge kilometers of network as well. So this is really exciting, and this is kind of tied into what we were doing in this pilot project and really helping shape where we're going and what we're doing next in WA. So basically where we're at now is we have are procuring LiDAR for our and 360 imagery for our entire state network, so nearly 20,000 kilometres. Some of that in year one, which is this year, is coming from that TomTom off-the-shelf MOMAR data, and some is being captured by our surveying panels that we have set up. We have also captured 390 kilometres of our PSP network, so our Principal Shared Path network. This is like a world first. We had one of our surveying companies put together, you can see this little bike here that they rode on our PSPs. So they put all of the gear that normally sits on top of a car on this trailer and bike setup so that it would be safe for other people who are using the PSPs to continue to ride their bikes and walk and run and all the things that people normally do. And the idea being that we can use this LiDAR to help build together a cycle wrap model for our PSP network, like what Rob was talking about with cycle wrap. So that's pretty cool. And we hope to recapture about 20% of our network each year, with the aim being to focus on locations that have just had works done, so that we can re-star rate them to be able to see and do our ribbon cutting and share our successes, as Matt got to talk about his. And also to focus on areas that have projects about to happen or coming up, so that the engineers and the designers have got the most current network when they're putting together their design. So we're trying to focus on that rather than just sort of setting this 20%, or this year we're going to do the north of the state and this year we're going to do the south. The other thing that we have procured is a web portal for our 3D LiDAR. And so the idea is that staff will be able to drive the three-dimensional network. They'll be able to take measurements, heights, volumes, areas, overlay other data that we have, in our database. So our star ratings will be able to go in there alongside information about speed limits, traffic volumes, all that sort of stuff. And finally, well, which has to happen to enable our iRap star rating, is to have all this LiDAR have the features extracted for iRap star rating. The other part of this is not just to be able to do our star rating, but to be able to do other assessments. So for example, we could do things like prioritize rural roads for widening works based on what their current shoulder widths are and clear zones. You know, where are those low-hanging fruit? Where have we already got unsealed shoulders that just could be sealed? Those sorts of things. And finally, I really want to talk about collaboration, because I stopped to really think about what the story was here, about what we've been doing and how we got here. And it really wouldn't have happened without various areas across main roads coming together and sharing the things that they knew were happening, but also that they were passionate about. And what we can get out of the resulting data out of all of this work that we're doing is not just going to help road safety, which of course it will help us be able to do our assessments, to be able to meet our requirements under the National Road Safety Strategy, and be able to do our, you know, ribbon cutting and all of that really exciting road safety stuff. But it'll also help us do things like our network and asset management. So for example, locating and positioning of and classification of all our electrical assets. Where are all our power poles? How do we locate all of our speed signs to improve understanding of our speed zones and things like that? To understand where various line markings are, and even potentially look at the condition of those line markings based on the retroreflectivity from the LiDAR and the 360 imagery, and then be able to, you know, put together works to work out where maintenance should be going. We'll be able to do, as I mentioned, you know, prioritization of low-cost widening projects, because we've got an understanding of what the roadside clearance is, what the shoulders are, what are the lane widths. This work and will be able to use for initial project identification and design options for project development, and for a relatively small extra cost, all this LiDAR can be upgraded to engineering level by adding ground control, which is really cool as well. Other project design features such as site distance assessments will be able to autonomously be able to run, you know, every 10 meters or whatever for pieces of road, like for traffic, road and traffic engineering. Be able to look at clearance for oversize over mass vehicles. So overhead structures such as bridges, but also trees and other roadside items. You know, can you get that oversize over mass vehicle down that route, or should they take a different route? So those things will really help our route planning for heavy vehicles and those sorts of things. In terms of environment, has the potential to be able to identify particular vegetation or vegetation density and the effect that might have on bushfire risk. In terms of our corporate data that we already have, being able to do some of that validation and check, you know, we've got an amazing source of data that we have at Main Roads, but we do have some legacy issues around when some things that haven't been updated in the past. And so being able to validate what we've currently got against a sort of a baseline is just very exciting for us. By having a portal where people can take measurements from their desk, for example, for preliminary crash investigations, you're reducing the amount of time that staff have to go out on site, which actually reduces their own risk and exposure. You know, so it increases the safety in terms of a health and safety perspective from our organisation. And by having staff driving around less, you reduce the cost for fleet in terms of petrol, wear and tear on the vehicles, but you also have this other benefit of reducing carbon emissions. So it's like win, 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 win all over the place. So I just really wanted to highlight some of those cross-agency benefits, because sometimes, particularly in a large organisation, it's hard to put forward your case just for your one thing. But if you're able to pull together lots of different areas and say this is going to make a really big difference for everybody, then you might be able to get the budget to kind of do this sort of stuff for yourselves, which would be really cool for everybody. Yes, and that is it from me. So thank you so much. Look forward to hearing questions.
Great, thank you, Fritha. That was yeah, a really great presentation, and yeah, so many exciting things that you shared. And yeah, already my brain is thinking about ways this could be used, yeah, in road safety here in Victoria. And yeah, looking forward to seeing some more outcomes from that. Yeah, so thank you again, Rob, Matt, and Fritha for sharing. It was yeah, really enjoyable presentations, and lots more to come, I can tell. We might move into a time of just some questions and answers. So there are a few questions in the chat already. Feel free to keep sending those through. And there were a couple, just let me open up the chat. There are a couple in the chat that I'll just bring up. So this one was directed to Matt, but there might be, I'm sure, Rob or Fritha, if you've got anything to add, feel free. So Mark Davies asks if the effect of COVID on traffic volumes has been considered when analysing star ratings for the 2022 data sets.
Yeah, so that one, it's a mixed bag. So if we think back to the updates, it was traffic volume, operating speed, and speed limits. So speed limits were the speed limits in 2022, so that's fine, not affected by COVID. Traffic volumes were actually the 2019 collection, I believe, and then some slight adjustments for like population growth or sort of network growth. So I guess not a good representation of potentially what happened in that COVID period, but still a good representation of now, and not a massive like delta, I guess, in terms of the change. So I don't really expect that to have changed the ratings significantly there. And the final one was probably, now that I think about it, this question put it in my mind, is to our detriment. We used actually here operating speeds from 2022, I believe. So with the effect that we saw across COVID, which was actually an increase in operating speed as opposed to a decrease, which has a negative road safety benefit, would probably filter through into that. So yeah, I think that's a good thought. So potentially at our detriment, we've had a slight maybe shift up in that sort of operating speed level. But again, I'm not sure that would necessarily have a massive delta on the actual results and the star ratings, but it is important, I guess, to understand those limitations.
Great. Fritha or Rob, was there anything that you wanted to add around just COVID and different volumes and the impacts that's had on this data?
Probably not in relation to the Victorian data, because I think that's very specific there. I mean, certainly what we saw with COVID worldwide was a reduction in traffic flow, an increase of speeds, and more people taking vulnerable forms of transport. And what we did see is certainly road fatality rates did not decrease linked to traffic flow. We actually saw an increase relative to traffic flow in most countries around the world. And we certainly saw basically what you had is a lot more people walking and cycling on 1- and 2-star facilities with higher speed traffic. And so that just led to more death and injury as a function relative to traffic. That's a fairly generic but quite representative truth in terms of what's happened worldwide, and certainly OECD and others have been busy studying that and its impacts, and it certainly needs to be understood as you look at any evaluations that cover and spread across that COVID period.
So I had another question from Ashworth that I think could be brought in for each of you to comment on. The question was around you know, star rating and the whole process. It could be expensive, and from a local council point of view, where they might not have the funds to be able to improve networks using the iRap framework. Are there any thoughts around, you know, how these iRap star rating tools could be used. Obviously, you got projects where you can put a lot of funds into collecting all this data, and then you've got other projects where you might be limited. Is there anything you can share on finding some more information or some thoughts around how to tackle that problem?
Yeah, I'm happy to perhaps lead on that, and then Matt and Frissa might be able to give some local examples if you're happy. Certainly, the key part is that there's a range of fit-for-purpose tools. So where you're needing to develop really well evidence-based investment plans and that whole long-term investment strategy, that's the sort of activities that WA and Victoria are doing. And you certainly don't need to collect it every year. One data collection effort can inform a 5-year or a 10-year investment plan if you're in a local government. So definitely keep that in mind. The other one is that we really encourage the fit-for-purpose approach. So in a local government, and I know for most of the states, there's really good crash data that the governments publish, and it's geospatial. So you can do your version of the crash risk mapping for a whole local government area, relatively low cost. That's a great initial scanning tool. You can then do light data type approaches, similar to what Frissa was saying with existing asset data, to, if you like, take your whole network and bring it down to something that's manageable, that you can actually invest in and make sure that you do those upgrades that save lives. So you might have your whole network, you bring it down to the highest risk 10% of that road length with the crash risk mapping. You then bring it down to the worst 2% of the network through that light data type approach. And then you go and do your star ratings and investment plans and ultimately upgrade those roads, whether it be speed reductions or infrastructure upgrades on that worst 2%. Then you do the next 2%, then the next 2%. We're always going to get there one road at a time. So don't be scared. Make sure you start, make it fit for purpose with what you can afford, but make sure you are ambitious. Like, don't let this problem fester for another 30 years. People in your communities can't afford it. And realistically, when you look at that total cost of the injury burden, the state can't afford it, the economy can't afford it, communities can't afford it. So you can put that business case together and change the whole landscape of investment. And again, picking up Frissa's point of bringing the other stakeholders, do it with your asset data collection, do it with the environmental side of things. But yeah, I'll pass over to both Frissa and Matt for more.
I don't know, Frissa. I can go first. I'm sort of ready. Yeah, that's a really good question, though. And I sort of see that as two things, and thanks, Rob, for sort of answering that as well. That was a great answer. But so there's two sort of questions, I guess, or challenges, which is the sort of cost of collecting iRap data on local networks. So I think Rob's covered that really well. The only other thing I might add would be potentially when you're looking to make improvements, that's another good time to collect. So collect on a sort of route level as opposed to a network level. You don't have to go network first. Potentially when you're looking to make a sort of investment, that could be the time to do it. And there's also a degree of how you do it. You don't necessarily need to do the full collection and coding. Someone can probably just do a desktop assessment through Google Maps or whatever sort of imagery you have available and get most of the answers there. There are different ways to sort of slice and dice it, and it should, as Rob said, sort of should be fit for purpose. But I guess the other one would be that cost of implementing 4+ star treatments, and that's one of the big challenges, I would say, for local governments, and it's something I don't necessarily have all the answers for at the moment, but it's sort of a journey we're looking to go on with our local governments in Victoria to sort of support them with that network safety planning approach. Because we sort of acknowledge on our own networks that not every road is going to have that 4 and 5 star treatment, type of treatment, like full containment barrier and that sort of, full upgrade, because that's just, outside of the scope of the money you could possibly spend. So, it's about a balance, when we're sort of looking at that investment in our high movement function corridors, and then trading it off with, a probably sort of speed management basis for lower function corridors to get that higher star rating, because there are low cost treatments that have a very, dramatic and large effect on road safety risk. They don't need you to go install or spend $1.7 billion to get there.
Yep. Yep, agreed with both Rob and Matt on those points. Yeah, starting with your crash risk mapping, definitely that's a pretty easy, low-cost way to go. The other thing I would say is that the advances in technology are happening at an exponential rate, which is actually driving the costs down insanely quickly. So it's the sort of thing that maybe 5 years ago were cost prohibitive. I would potentially relook at, especially for those, really bad 2 or 10% of your network, go and see what's available. There's companies that have just already collected it. They've just got it sitting there on their shelf and you just purchase it off them. So yeah, I think over the next few years, this is going to become more and more sort of available to more and more roads and heading towards the iRap dream of being able to star rate all the roads on the earth. So yeah, we're getting there.
Great, thank you. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. Neil asked in the chat to Rob, is the interactive tool being used in the UK available in VIDA?
Yeah, so VIDA, that's the
VIDA,
name
yeah.
of the software where all the star ratings and investment plans happen. And for those with any Spanish knowledge, it's Spanish for life. So that's the VIDA product where all the analysis happens. So Neil, thanks for the question. And yes, we've got that now at a functional level within the UK, and it's being used by all of the local counties and DFT, Department for Transport in the UK. So it's operational. We're actually just in the last stages of just making sure all the bugs are picked up and all the feedback from the county officials has been used to improve it. But then it will be sort of fully available and accessible for free alongside all the other tools. So that route, what they're calling the route review tool, is basically the name of it, but that should be available for all the iRap partners worldwide within the next few months. So we'll make sure we share that out through the ITE network and Off-Roads, and certainly be keen for people to try it and test it and improve it here as well.
And another question in the chat, just around accuracy in the data that's being collected and looked at with the fast changes in technology. Are there any papers or any more information around looking at accuracy that if anyone's interested in looking at?
Yeah, one thing I'm aware of will be the iMove report that was done with Transport for New South Wales. So some really good work there, looking at where digital data can actually bring greater accuracy and sort of where you start seeing a lot of improvements on accuracy, whether it be curvature and whether it be some of the other attributes. So certainly that report's probably a key one, and I'll look to share that via Daniel and the ITE team as well. But I imagine Frissa's got lots to share too.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything public as yet, but hoping to have more things as we kind of move through this next year in particular, I'd say. Yeah. But the iMove one would be a great one to look at if you're able to share that, for sure.
Yeah, great. And yeah, if there are any questions that haven't been responded to, we'll note those down and make them available. I had one question, Fritha, for you, and again, Rob and Matt might be able to input as well. You're talking about recapturing parts of the network that have changed or whatnot, and I know here in Victoria and I think around the country, there's been a lot of weather events happening that have changed roads and the roadside. Do you know what that could look like in the future in terms of recapturing sections of the road that have had these weather events happen, and sort of the turnaround and being able to assess star ratings for the network that might have been affected?
Yeah, so Main Roads has a really great setup with a number of surveying companies, our survey panel, and so we're quite agile really at being able to send out jobs and move sort of people and companies around to collect additional data. I know up north in WA, there were quite a lot of bridges and roads washed out over sort of the Christmas period. and there will definitely be some, capture that we will have to, get up there, because currently the roads don't exist or are being rebuilt as we speak. So yeah, I think that will be one of the, I guess that's another reason we didn't just want to sort of set this is this 20% in, this year and so forth and so on. We want to be able to shift that around. I mean, I think the result will mean that some roads might have, LiDAR updated every year for a few years while they're going, prior to a project, and then having had works and then post a project, and then might not have any capture done for, 5 or even 10 years, depending on where they are. Some of our roads, some of the more seasoned travellers might have heard of the Gibb River Road, and it's a piece of road that is mostly unsealed. Chances are it will never be sealed because people love to drive the Gibb River Road. It's, on a lot of people's bucket lists. So that's the sort of road that you might, only survey once every 10 years, because you're not going to have, because it has a different purpose than for it to, people aren't trying to do it at speed or anything like that. They're there to enjoy the journey. So I think that, yeah, definitely weather events will make a big change, and that's why it's good to be able to be flexible and not have it all set in stone to begin with.
Great. All right. So I think we'll, in terms of any other questions, we'll note them down, and we'll seek to get some answers and responses to those that we'll provide on the website. I'll actually just put if you want any more information, just head to our website, and we'll put the recording as well, and details for contacting any of our speakers. But yeah, thank you again. Just one final question for each of you. And I know, Rob, I'm really inspired when you talk about these international meetings you have. What would be your one bit of advice for how we can, I guess, influence those around us, colleagues, around improving road safety, and using some of these amazing tools that we have?
Yeah, great question. Let me say, my son, who's now 18 years old, he's in that age bracket where the most likely way he will die is in a road crash. One day when I was heading off on one of these trips that we do globally, he said to me, "Dad, doctors save lives one at a time. You're saving them by the thousands." And all I'd ask each of you to do is recognise that as engineers, you've got a code of ethics that says do no harm in most of our operational ethics. And each of you is sitting on the opportunity to save thousands of lives. So fight for that. It is worth fighting for within your organisation, with management, for budgets. But then when you do succeed, celebrate it and be really, really proud of it, because saving a life, just have a think of someone you love. That'll put it in perspective for you, and use that as your inspiration next time you're up against the road safety challenge, and take it on head on.
And Matt, is there anything you'd like to add, just just as an encouragement with what you're seeing with the data, and how we can take that into our day-to-day jobs?
Yeah, look, Rob's nailed it. I don't really want to follow that up, to be honest. I'm going to pass. Rob's killed it. That's it. He's nailed it.
Great. Will you pass as well, Fritha?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Rob did nail it.
Yeah.
I guess the only other thing is to remember, or to think about, what other benefits might you get from that proposal. I think there's other presentations Rob has given. He's talked about benefits to, you save, once you save all these lives, you reduce, hospital costs and other, there are always going to be other wins. So if you can try to work out what those are, and work out if there's one of those that relates to the person you're trying to sell on whatever idea it is you're trying to push, that would be a key thing. You don't have to, it can be road safety driven, but you can tie together some of those other wins as well.
Yeah. Great. Well, again, thank you, Rob, Matt, and Fritha, for your presentations. We really appreciated it. For everyone that attended, thank you for joining us. It was really great to have you. Again, feel free to head over to our website for any more information, and we'll pass all those other links so you can have a look at iRap and what's happening for Department of Transport and Planning and Main Roads WA. So thank you again. We'll have this recorded and hopefully posted in the next few days, and have a great evening.